If we didn't have Gloria, we'd have to send out to Sanford casting for somebody like that, who in her own body and presentation tells you you can be beautiful and have any man you want and still be critical of men and still be a little bit angry.
With all the jokes there are about women's lib and all of that, and then people say, yeah, but what have you finally accomplished, really?
I think that women are changing the way they're thinking about themselves.
She had all these media skills that were so superior to anything anybody else had. Plus, she's drop dead gorgeous. She transformed the movement. All of a sudden, we had a face, and it wasn't an angry face.
Gloria Steinem grew up in Toledo, Ohio. Her mother had given up a career as a journalist to support her husband's ambitions. Steinem watched her spiral into depression.
I can't even emphasize what it's like. It's like giving up being a person. It's giving up your interests. It's giving up what makes you unique. It's giving up what gives you joy, what you love to do, and become an addendum, a mother of, a wife of.
As a girl, Steinem saw little hope of avoiding the same fate.
The only place I saw female human beings who were doing something different was in the movies. So I took tap dancing lessons and dancing lessons, and I entered contests. Other than that, my ambitions were getting out of Toledo and marrying somebody who had a life I wanted, because I didn't think that I could create a life myself.
Steinem arrived in New York in the early 60s, hoping to forge her own career in journalism. But she found herself stymied at nearly every turn.
I got a few assignments. The New York Times assigned me to write about how to put up with an English man. The low point of my life was writing an entire Sunday magazine article about textured stockings for the New York Times. I tried to write about Mayor Lindsay. They gave me his wife to write about.
As the women's movement gathered strength, Steinem looked for opportunities to write about it. In 1969, she covered a public hearing on abortion, which was interrupted by women wanting to tell their own stories.
Women are not going to sit quietly any longer. You are murdering us.
I had had an abortion when I was newly out of college, and had never told anyone.
All right, will you please sit down and be removed from
No, we aren't going to sit down. Why don't you give us some solid answers to our questions?
I listened to these women testify about all that they had to go through, what it was like to enter into a criminal underground and risk your health and perhaps your life. So I came back and I wrote about it. After I wrote it, my male colleagues on New York Magazine took me aside and they said, look, do not get involved with these crazy women. You know, you worked hard to be taken seriously. Do not get involved. And I thought, they don't know who I am, and it's not their fault, because I haven't told them.
Awakened to her own deep anger, Steinem began to speak out in public herself.
2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't have had the courage to speak before this audience. Now, thanks to the spirit of equality in the air, I no longer accept society's judgment that my group is second class.
I was just caught up in the contagion of it, and it made so much sense of my life and everybody else's life, and I just wanted to say it. I wanted to write it and speak it.
Steinem believed that feminism would never be given a fair hearing in the magazine she wrote for. So she started her own, with a group of other successful journalists. They called it Ms.
Almost all of us have worked for other magazines, especially women's magazines, which we didn't read. They simply didn't say what are the truths of women's lives. And that's basically what we want this to be, a place where women can tell the truth, can read the truth, can get advice.
Welcome to chaos.
The major media immediately predicted the demise of Ms.
They said it all in the first little issue. I can imagine some stark anti-sexist editorial meeting trying to decide what to do next. After you've done marriage contracts, role exchanging, and the female identity crisis, what do? Organic foods for Christmas dinner, I suppose.
Our first issue sold out in 8 days. It was supposed to be on sale for 8 weeks. It was the talk of the town. In New York and wherever I went, people were just fascinated because here we were coming along and talking about women who were punched around and fighting back. How to look at your own cervix, how to let your body hair grow because otherwise you're a slave to your tweezers. You know, these were completely astonishing articles. So of course we were the talk of the town.
When I got to college, Ms. Magazine and Gloria Steinem made, I think, all women and girls sit up and think, wow, you know, maybe there's more than meets the eye here. It challenged our own thinking about what we could go and do.
Who is it you're trying to reach?
Everybody. I mean, there is no woman in the country who we are not trying to reach.
Thousands of women got to know the women's movement through Ms. Magazine, and who would say they felt like they knew Gloria. She created a bridge, and we can know this was true because of the letters that came to Ms. Magazine.
They were stories. They were amazing personal responses. I would say the dominant theme was, at last I know I'm not crazy, or at last I know I'm not alone.
One of the readers of Ms. was Rose Garrity, a young mother in Binghamton, New York, trapped in an abusive marriage.
There weren't any domestic violence programs back then. Nobody talked about it. It wasn't even whispered anyplace. I kept hoping it would get better. I kept hoping that it would stop. I'll never forget the Ms. Magazine. It was the first I'd ever heard it mentioned anyplace besides in my own home, and start to have an awareness that this is going on with other people, and it's not so much about me or us, but that it's a bigger issue.
Risking the wrath of her husband, Rose smuggled copies of Ms. and other feminist publications into an old blanket chest in her home.
If I thought I was going to be alone for an hour, I would slip it out of the blanket chest and read it for a while. Ms. Magazine was a big lifeline for me because it was my only window into the outside world. A world radically different from where I lived and anything I knew.
I humbly admit that I was wrong when I predicted that Ms., the magazine of women's liberation, would fold after 5 or fewer issues. Issue 7 is now in the stands. Ms. has every right to feel proud.
As Ms. Magazine widened the reach of feminism, it helped usher in a new era of the women's movement. In the years to come, the movement would migrate from an outsider's insurgency to the mainstream of American life, where it would lay siege to the country's most established institutions, even the relationship between men and women.